Before I start the meeting, I just have a few announcements. As you saw when you came in the front door, we have different organizations set up in the lobby. As you go through the door, they're not in any particular order. There's people there from the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. There's the library presentation. Friends of Hardwick Elementary School are doing a raffle for a gift basket. The food is furnished by the Hazen Music group that is raising money for a trip to Ireland. They have sandwiches, macaroni and cheese, corn chowder, snacks, soda, water, and coffee. Reach is also out there with information for their after-school program. And the Hardwick Community TV is passing out flyers as well as broadcasting us live today. And one of the little flyers they're passing out, for your knowledge, is they're moving from channel 16 to channel 1080. And it's on Comcast cable. So that's what's out there. And I'm going to ask the head table to introduce themselves at this time. Sean?
Good morning. I'm Sean Fielder, the town manager.
Hi, I'm Eric Remick. I'm chair of the select board.
Sherry Cornish, select board.
Elizabeth Dow, select board member.
Lucian Avery, select board member.
Danny Hale, select board.
Aaron Cochran, police chief.
Aaron, could you pass it over to the other table, please? Let them know, everybody that's up here.
Alberta Miller, town clerk, treasurer.
Amanda Fecto, payroll admin.
Casey Rowell, business manager.
Thank you. And today we are voting in the back for the presidential primary, and I ask people when they're voting to keep the noise down so that we can hear up here. We're also voting on the Orleans Southwest Union Elementary School District and Hazen Union number 26 school budgets for 2021. We're voting for select board members, 2 Hazen Union board members, and if you saw in the minutes that we were also supposed to be voting on a fire truck today, that vote has been delayed until into April. Robert's rules are the basic rules of order for this meeting. All motions and remarks should be addressed to the moderator. Articles must be moved, seconded, and then restated by the moderator before debate can begin. For the previous article to be reconsidered, the request must be made before the moderator restates the next article. And this requires the request to reconsider be from a person that voted on the prevailing side. And yes, I will ask how you voted. State law says that I can, so that one vote would not be confidential. Articles may have one amendment, and the amendment can be amended once. The voting to proceed from the last proposed amendment back to the main motion, and then we vote on the main motion. It is possible to do this any number of times, then we will go on to the next article. We can also suspend the rules by a 2/3 majority and do all appropriations as a block, Articles 7 and 20. But you still can discuss each individual article to the extent that you wish. No seconds are needed for nominations. A paper ballot is required for the election of town listers and auditors, and this could be done by the moderator directing the town clerk to cast one ballot. That does not mean that we all have to vote paper ballot. Debate can be stopped with a motion to call the question, which requires a 2/3 vote. However, the person making this motion cannot just jump up and say, call the question. They need to be recognized in the order that I see the hands going up. The role of the moderator is to explain procedural questions, but no voter should hesitate to ask a question on understanding what is being voted on. Point of order questions take priority at any time. So if you're concerned about something and have a point of order, just stand and say point of order and you will be recognized. Once you are recognized, you need to stand The microphone is in the center aisle, as we have no runner today unless someone is willing to volunteer. And you need to state, we have a volunteer? All right. So we have a runner, and she's running. And then that way, just wait for the mic, state your name, and then you can be recognized. A voter will not be recognized to speak a second time on the same motion or amendment until all other voters have had a chance to speak the first time. And if your cell phone rings, please take it in the lobby. And that reminds me, we have 2 bathrooms. There's actually 4. There's 2 out this way. Go through the gym, take a left and a right, and they're down the hallway to the exit. If you go out this door, go up the stairs, go to the end, and they're just beyond the elevator on your left. Non-voters may not speak only if the House suspends the rules, and I'll be making a request for that once we call the meeting to order. And is anyone out there not a voter, so that I would have some clue as to who's not on the checklist here in Hardwick? Thank you. If the moderator cannot decide the outcome of a voice vote, a division will be requested. But voters can always request a paper ballot at any time as long as 7 people agree. And thank you. Let's have a wonderful and friendly meeting. The other thing I forgot to tell you is there's also paperwork being passed out which refers to Article 6 for the Communication Union District called the CUD. And that will be coming up later. So, the legal voters of the town of Hardwick, Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Hardwick Elementary School in said town of Hardwick on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon to act on the following business. Election of Town Select Board and Union School District number 26 directors will be voted on by Australian ballot. The polls will open at 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. If special accommodations are necessary, please contact Alberta at the table. No one will answer at the phone. Catherine, use the mic.
Hi, everyone. I'm just here to tell you all that we have an open seat.
Your name, please?
Sorry, Catherine Ingram from East Hardwick. I'm the chair of the OSUED School Board, and we have an open seat, a vacancy on the school board. It's 2 years of a 3-year seat, and we really need someone from Hardwick. And because elections happened on February 18th at the annual meeting, if you're interested in this position, you'll need to submit your interest to the select board, to Sean, and they'll appoint you, and then. And so everyone knows in 2021, next spring, we are going to need 3 additional people to serve on the board. So we will have 5 seats. So we really need some folks to come and join the school board. So that was all. And I'm also in the lobby talking about school campus use, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you. Article 1, to elect a moderator to govern said town meeting and for the year ensuing. What is your pleasure? Dave Shepard is nominated, or Rise Ainsworth. Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Rise Ainsworth for a year as moderator, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion is carried, and Rise thanks you. Before we go any further, I would like to ask if there are no objections to suspending the rules to allow our town manager, Sean Fielder, the payroll person, Amanda Fecteau, and the business manager, Casey Rowell, to speak at any time if there are questions appropriate. Are there any objections? Thank you. Article 2, shall the town accept the town report for year ending June 30, 2019. Could we have it quiet in the back, please? We can't hear up here. Thank you. Richard, could you shut the curtains on the stage too? Thank you. Is there a motion to accept Article 2? Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the town report as presented by the Select Board? And if you need extra copies, are they out back? Yeah. If you need a copy, they're down on the first table as you come in to vote. All those in favor of the town, all those in favor of accepting the town report year ending June 30, 2019 as presented, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion is carried. Article 3, to elect all town officers and school district number 26 directors as required by the public laws of Vermont and the town charter. Again, the Select Board and Union School District number 26 directors are to be voted by Australian ballot. The first one listed is a lister for a 3-year term, which is currently held by Jan Howard. Are there any nominations? We have a nomination for Jan Howard. Are there any other nominations? As long as there's only one candidate, if there's no objections, I will direct the clerk to cast one ballot for Jan Howard. Any objections? So directed, Alberta. Thank you. The second one is one auditor for a 3-year term, currently being served by Ivan Menard. Are there any nominations? I heard something, but I don't know what. I have a nomination for Ivan Menard. Are there any other nominations? Have a motion for the clerk to cast one ballot for Ivan Menard. Is there a second to that motion? I have a motion and a second for the clerk to cast one ballot for Ivan Menard. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion is carried, and Alberta will cast a ballot. The next officer is First Constable for a 1-year term, currently served by Arthur Chase. Are there any nominations? I have a nomination for Art Chase. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Art Chase as First Constable for 1 year, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion is carried and Art is reelected. Second Constable for a 1-year term is currently Erwin Gilchrist. Are there any nominations? Have a nomination for Erwin Gilchrist. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Erwin Gilchrist as Second Constable for 1 year, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? And thank you, Erwin is reelected. One town agent for a 1-year term is currently served by Karen Holmes. Are there any nominations? I have a nomination for Karen Holmes. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Karen Holmes as a town agent for a 1-year term, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries and Karen is reelected. Surveyor of wood, bark, and lumber for a 1-year term is currently served by Lucian Avery. Are there any nominations? I have a motion to nominate Lucian Avery. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Lucian Avery as Surveyor of Wood, Bark, and Lumber for 1 year, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? And the motion carries and Lucian is reelected. Tree Warden is currently served by Lucian Avery. It's a 1-year term. Are there any nominations? I have one back there, a nomination for Lucian Avery. And if you're going to speak, you have to speak louder because it's not good acoustics in here today. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Lucian Avery for tree warden for 1 year, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Objections? Motion carries and Lucian is reelected. Cemetery trustees are listed on page 3. In addition to, and these are 1-year terms, in addition to the Main Street, Maple Street, Fairview, Hardwick Street, there's also West Hill and Hardwick Center. And those can be elected by, as we like to say, the same old board. And they're on the left-hand side on page 3. Are there any nominations? I have a motion to elect the same old board, which are trustees for Main Street, Maple, and Fairview, and the select board have the other 4. Any other nominations? Hearing none, and if no one objects, I will use that same terminology. All those in favor of electing the same old group or the same old boards for the cemetery trustees, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion is carried, and they are elected for a 1-year term. The next one is a library trustee for a 3-year term, and I understand we have new people coming into these. Oh, I missed the fire department, excuse me, thank you. I put the check in the wrong spot. Thank you. The fire department officers can also be voted as one, and they're on the top right on the page 3. Any nominations? We have a motion to nominate the fire department officials as presented on page 3 in one block. Are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor of electing the fire department officials as listed on the top right on page 3, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions, and the motion carries. Now we will go to the library trustees. It's a 3-year term. Are there any nominations? Yes. We have a nomination for Ross Conley for this 3-year term. Are there any other nominations? Not seeing or hearing any. All those in favor of electing Ross Conley for a library trustee for a 3-year term, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Objections? And Ross is elected. There is another 3-year term that needs a nomination, please. I have a nomination for Daphne Kelmar. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Daphne Kelmar as a library trustee for 3 years, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? I declare that she is elected for library trustee for a 3-year term. The last library trustee to be elected this year is for a 1 year remaining on a 3-year term. Nominations, please. Jody? Rosano? Rosano, we have a nomination for Elizabeth Rosano. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Elizabeth Rosano as a library trustee to fill the 1 year remaining on a 3-year term, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions, and the motion carries, and she is elected for a 1-year term. Currently, the grand jury position is empty. We need someone to serve a 1-year term. Are there any nominations? Anybody volunteer themselves? Not hearing any. That office, yes, David? You'll do it? Does that require any special degree or anything to be a grand juror? Okay. We have Dave Shepard nominating himself. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Dave Shepard as grand juror for a 1-year term, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? Dave Shepard is elected. Trustee of Public Funds is also vacant, and that's a one-year term. Are there any nominations? Volunteers? If not, the Select Board will fill that position. Moving on, and that was left for the Select Board. Trustee of Public Funds, this position is currently held by Mario Fredette. It's a one-year term. Are there any nominations? I have a nomination for Mario Fredette. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Mario Fredette as Trustee of Public Funds for a one-year term, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries and Mario is reelected. The third Trustee of Public Funds for a one-year term is currently held by Lorraine Huzzy. Are there any nominations? I have a nomination of Lorraine Huzzy. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Lorraine Huzzy as a Trustee of Public Funds for a one-year term, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries and Lorraine is reelected. Fence viewers for a one-year term are currently the local listers. Are there any nominations? I have a nomination for the listers. Are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor of electing the listers as fence viewers for a one-year term, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries and the listers have another job. Moving on to Article 4. Shall the town have its current taxes collected by the town treasurer? What is your pleasure? I have a motion to move the article. Is there a second? And a second. It's been moved and seconded to have the town have its current taxes collected by the town treasurer. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Article 4, shall the town have its current taxes collected by the town treasurer, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? And the motion carries. Article 5. Shall the town vote a budget of $3,465,120 to meet the expenses and liabilities of the town and authorize the Select Board to set a new tax rate sufficient to provide the same? What is your pleasure? I have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second for the town to vote to approve a budget of $3,465,120 to meet the expenses and liabilities of the town and authorize the Select Board to set a new tax rate sufficient to the same. Are there any questions, concerns? And I believe Eric and Sean Sean's going to speak. Sean's going to speak to it.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. There we go. I'll offer just a little bit of commentary, some of the highlights from Town Manager's report, which I've lost track of what page. Somebody help me out what page Town Manager's report is listed on if you want to just follow along. Sorry, I should have noted that.
28.
Page 28, so I'll hit some of the highlights of what I've already provided in the town report. So at the close of 2019, the town added to our fund balance $103,664. This is effectively the town's savings account. So in total, in the fund balance at this time, $515,646, which is about 16% of the town budget. The generally industry recognized recommendation is 15%, so we're just a little bit above what we should have in reserves, and this would be to cover any unanticipated costs in a given budget year. Let me address a few of our capital projects that we have completed this past year. This would be a closeout of FY19. Road and ditch improvements, portions of Hardwick Farms Road, Hopkins Hill, Marsh Road, West Hill Extension, Porter Brook Road, and Macville Road. This is something I didn't necessarily note in my report, but I think it's pretty important to call attention to. I think we're all aware we've had some pretty significant rain events ongoing this past couple of years, this year being no exception. And with these improvements that we have been doing to our ditches and road systems, it has prevented washouts in a number of instances. So I think everybody's aware some of our surrounding towns coming off the Halloween storm this past year had some pretty significant problems. In certain portions of town, we experienced the same amount of rainfall, but again, with this ditch work that we've been doing and improvements, it's really keeping the infrastructure held up, if you will, so those are pretty important things. Paving completed this past year on Glenside Avenue, Sumner Street, Holton Hill, Dewey Street, Summer Street, and portions of Junction Road and Log Yard Drive. We did some brushback this year. We made a change this past couple of years where we'd had a chipper in the past that was town equipment, and what we ended up doing this year is for the village area, having the highway crew do some work there, but then worked with a contractor to do brushback of Hardwick Street, portions of Macville Road, Nichols Pond Road, and Dutton Road. I do recognize, and we did receive a handful of complaints about what that looked like at the end of stick season, and it wasn't ideal. But the fact of the matter is we got to cut back some of this brush so we're not getting leafed in and branched in. So, anybody with a vehicle or a truck or a tractor, isn't having those limbs impact their vehicles to cut to it. So that work's going to continue moving forward. We're doing our best to catch up on that in various areas of town. For Public Water System Enterprise Fund, we are carefully reviewing that fund on a year-to-year basis. We are looking at our rates. This is for both water and wastewater. And our objective, so everybody is aware, is to cover our operating expenses, do the improvements that are required per the Safe Drinking Water Act and Vermont Water Supply Rule. On the wastewater side, it would be the Wastewater Management Division Clean Water Act rules, so there's quite a bit to keep up with there. We also have some reserves for some of the capital improvements that are going to be required ongoing. This year we did develop a frequently asked questions item, and that was provided in everybody's first bill this past fall, where we have that up on the website as of now, and we're going to continue to update and modify that as we move forward. In 2019, on water system work, we did install another 19 meters. At this time, we're about 87% metered on our public water system, serving the village and nearby areas. And our objective is in this next couple of years to get to a 100% metered situation. So we have approximately 70 accounts remaining to get to this 100% metered situation. The significant project this year was we were able to complete the repair of the Bridgman Hill Water Storage Reservoir. Recall about this time last year, we were dealing with a catastrophic failure of the roof. We worked aggressively this past year to get the roof repaired. Our target was the end of December 2019. We have a few punch list items that we have to finish out this spring, but we met our objective of getting the reservoir back online within 2 weeks. So if you haven't gotten the news, and hopefully you already have, the Bridgman Hill Water System, storage reservoir, is back online. And again, that was a pretty significant achievement. We had the roof repair itself, but as we got into the project, we realized that there were some floor repairs that also had to take place that we did not anticipate. So that added on a little bit of time. We are not closed out on this in regards to the financing. This will be done once we finish the turnkey process this spring. And at that point, we're going to know the details of grant support from the State Drinking Water Program and the details in regards to our bonding. As was expressed when we went to our bond vote, what we anticipate moving forward is very small, $8 or $10, a given quarter at most for most users to help cover the cost for this improvement. Wastewater system projects this past year included aeration system upgrades for the wastewater treatment facility, and we're continuing to investigate the collection system for the wastewater facility. Recognize this is a system from the early 1900s. There's certain sections that are pushing 100 years old, so we are doing our best to have our inventories in order and figure out those areas that are needing improvements and upgrades to ensure the integrity moving forward. We are doing regular work on checking for inflow and infiltration. This again is to get to the integrity of the system. On Charlevoix Drive this year, as an example, we did a slip lining process where we actually improved a section of 2-inch ceramic pipe that dated from the 1930s, and this is pretty significant improvement preventing this inflow and infiltration. Why this is important, of course, is that we wouldn't want to have hydraulic overload at the wastewater treatment facility, and that's been some significant improvements in what we're going to be receiving there at the facility. For stormwater system repairs, we did have an issue with Glenside and Mill Street stormwater system the end of this fall. We were able to get that repaired as well and fortunately resolve that problem. Stormwater work, we did a installation of a one-way flow valve near the Cottage Street Bridge. The objective on this is to, when we have a high water situation on the Lamoille, heavy rain events, the intent is to prevent a backflow into the stormwater drainage system. So that was nicely supported with grant support from Watershed Management. The state of Vermont provided some support on that. Public Works projects moving forward, planning of paving of Hillside Street, Woodbury Street, Prospect Street, Central Street, Park Street, and West Hill Road. At this time, planning for continued work on our road and ditch work. And let me just note this, we do have an actual roads permit that is issued by the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, so when we're talking about these ditch and road improvements, we are obligated to go out and check these areas that have steep ditching, steep grades, and make sure we are making the adjustments to prevent washouts and erosion and then impacts to the receiving water bodies. So the town has been very aggressive on this work this past number of years, and I've already indicated what we're seeing on these intensity rain events moving forward. Our infrastructure generally is holding up pretty well, so those projects are very valuable for us. We have sidewalk improvements to several areas of the village planned this year. On a side note related to this, we have had some ongoing meetings with the Pedestrian and Traffic Safety Task Force. Planning Commission members, a couple of select board members, myself are involved with this. The objective is just to get stakeholder input and review what are folks' concerns for pedestrian traffic safety. Talking about location of crosswalks, parking, signage, it's a little bit of everything. And the intent is in this next couple-month period, the task force will provide some suggested recommendations to the select board for their consideration for potential improvements we could be making. Yellow Barn Business Accelerator Project has been talked about for a number of years here in the community, and it's been 3 years in the making. The update at this time is that we have made some significant advances this past year to obtain required permits, get our design information in order, secure tenants. At this time, we have commitments from Cabot Cheese and Jasper Hill to be involved with the project. We have also secured additional grant support from a number of entities. We are waiting for a larger grant award from the Environmental Development, Economic Development Administration. That is a $3 million ask. It's obviously significant. With that coming in, it's going to be triggering a lot of the other processes toward us trying to break ground here this summer of 2020. I do want to call everybody's attention to an executive summary that we do have in the front lobby. I know there are questions about the Yellow Barn project ongoing. As I say, we've got an executive summary there, It's right adjacent to where the LVRT information is, so please have a look at that. There's a view, a bird's eye view of the project. There's also what I think is very significant. There's some economic development information that's listed there as far as what are we going to have for gains for Hardwick and the surrounding areas. So just have a look at that information. There is also a website that's listed on the executive summary, so you can track ongoing what is happening on the project. I think I would like to point out that we've had a significant amount of support from Northeast Vermont Development Association on this. That's our regional planning commission. They've been very helpful on this process ongoing. We have had some advances, and we'll see some continued work on the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. In early 2019, the town did secure a grant from Vermont USDA in the amount of $175,512. That's going to be put toward improvements on the section that runs from Slap Hill up to Pumpkin Lane. We are reviewing our bid information at this time, and our intent is to go to construction on this portion this summer. So everything holds to the plan. We should be in a position to have a completed or at least a passable section of trail that goes from the village area right up to the East Hardwick area. If you're not aware, Governor Scott has put in his budget, and the legislature will be considering this moving forward, some funding that if we can get the state dollars on the table, then it's going to free up federal match that effectively would allow the state of Vermont to finish 60 miles of the LVRT. So it would make for a end-to-end completion of the project going from St. Johnsbury to Swanton. This has significant positive economic impacts for not just Hardwick, but Northeast Kingdom, all the way heading over into Swanton. The recreational economy, I think most folks recognize the recreational economy is one of those areas where we have some significant positive things happening. So my opinion is if you have an opportunity to speak up to our legislators, your legislators about the importance of this, please do consider offering that to them. Other improvements for the Creamery Road area, so we will be doing construction on that this summer. This would be in the area near the town garage. And then we have partners working on other portions of LVRT, so there is a bid there's a construction contract in place as of now for the bridges number 38 and 40, which are east of the village area up in what we refer to as the corners of 15. Those bridges, decks, and railings are planned to be completed by the end of this June 2020. So, hopefully we're going to be in a position, as I say, within this next 8 months or so, that we're going to be able to better use this resource for recreation, and that's four-season recreation, of course. I'll just close with this. You should be getting the news that the 2020 census is in process. This is mandated by our Constitution, the country's Constitution, of course. It's done every 10 years, and it is important that you do offer input and information on the census. That data is used to determine how funding federally is distributed to the states, to local locations, just like the town of Hardwick, and it makes a significant difference in those grants and funding programs that we can take advantage of. So please do participate in that. You can get more information at 2020census.gov. And I know the census is being pretty aggressive with their marketing campaign and getting people out in the field to do our best to get folks to take part. So that's what I have for some of the highlights. I'd be glad to receive any questions that there might be from the audience at this time.
David? We need a mic. Get up. Okay, she's going to do it.
Yeah, Dave Shepard. If your budget stays approximately the same next year and you don't have to dip into your reserve fund, and you're already at about 16% with your guideline at 15%, would you anticipate that you wouldn't be putting additional funds into the reserve fund?
the select board will need to offer some comment on this as well, of course, but I think what we would want to do on this generally as a process is not start to see that ramp up significantly is what I think would be happening on this, Dave. So do you want to offer a little bit on this, Eric? I mean, we're not trying to get this at 20% or 25% is my observation. You know, we're trying to keep right at that 15% trend.
Because $500,000 is pretty significant.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, $500,000 does seem pretty significant. In the terms of our budget, it's not tremendous, and we could envision a disaster that might eat all that up in like a single road or bridge repair, for example. But as Sean said, we're not looking to raise that above the recommended allowance. But what does happen is at the end of every budget year, anything that we've budgeted money for, we've collected the money, if we haven't spent it, goes into that fund balance. Then, or conversely, if we've spent more than we budgeted, more than we took in, then money gets taken out of that fund balance. So the idea is that, you know, to hit it right even so that you budgeted the right amount and you came out at zero. But that usually doesn't happen. Usually we're a little above or a little below. So we're not intentionally, at this point, we're not intentionally adding to that.
Yeah. Just a water question. This may be obvious, but when you said you were looking to get 100% on your meters, is that referring to business meters or residential and business?
Everyone. So for those who may not recall, when we decided to go to a system where everyone was metered, we got estimates. We contracted out the meter installation. We bought meter. We selected a vendor and a contractor to put in meters. They came back with what was a reasonable quote to do the majority of the meters for buildings that don't have a basement and where the incoming water is in a place where it's subject to freeze. In those cases, we need to actually dig outside and bury a meter pit that's underground. It was a minority of the services in town, and the estimate was huge. It was astronomical. And what we decided was, for better or for worse, what we decided then was we're not going to go with that and have the contractor install those. We will try to, we'll do all the others, and then we're going to pick away at those remaining ones over the years. And that's what's been happening. I think you said we did like 15 or 17 this year? 19 this year. So, and trying to get the process down on that. It's not super clear cut because when they dig in the ground, you never know what you're going to find when you dig. So you don't know what kind of water pipe, you don't know if you're going to bump into somebody's electrical service, you know, it's always a project. But we're going to try to get those done.
So the goal is to get 100% of all residences on meter.
And businesses, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Sean? In back here. Just a minute, wait for the mic, please. And state your name.
Brad Ferlin. Morning, Sean.
Good morning, Brad.
My question is, the governor's budget does include $2.8 million in matching federal funds of like $11 million, so for a total of $14 million to build out the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. And I think just these past 2 weeks, they've expedited that schedule from a 5-year build-out to a 2-year build-out, if the bill is passed. So my only question is, knowing that that's happening and it is a top priority at the state, are we investing local funds in this project that we may not necessarily have to be? Even though we all agree on the goal and the desire to have it completed, are we getting out ahead of that federal funding and the state funding with our local dollars first?
My observation is we are not getting ahead. What we have for our construction projects for summer of 2020, we're planning to move forward on those. So we've got our budgets are in order. We have our, I mentioned the improvement from Slap Hill out to Pumpkin Lane, with our grant support from USDA, from donations and funds that have been offered through various entities up to this point. We're not having to put extra toward that, is how I would say it. You know, it's a very good question. Well, if the state's going to bring this, we probably want to check up on what we're doing for local dollars moving forward. The way that we're thinking about it, and Eric is very versed on this, being that he's representing and pretty active with the Friends of LVRT, we are, as I say, we're going forward with these sections of Creamery. That is some leftover federal money from an earmark from, believe it or not, 2006. So that's something that isn't a negative impact to our your local pocketbooks. And then again, the bridge decks that I've mentioned, those are NBRC monies, Northern Border Regional Commission grants. So there's no local impact there. So I do see us having a decent clean break, so we're not negatively impacting people's bottom line. Eric, I think, will offer a little bit here too.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in here too. So I think that a couple things I'd like to respond. So we do have a article near the end of our agenda to vote a resolution to encourage the legislature to go ahead and approve those funds. It's not a done deal yet. I think that what we're spending locally, a couple things are worth pointing out. One is that I think that what we have done here in Hardwick and what's happening in Cambridge have demonstrated that there's a lot of local support for this trail, and that's pushed the governor and the legislature to be where they are today. So I think part of the momentum that we've started is helping to actually see this thing completed. As far as local funds, we do have local funds committed for the Creamery Road portion by the depot and the town garage. And another component of that section that people should probably be aware of is part of that, actually originally that was before we were thinking about building the trail, and it was a parking area that was the majority of that project. And in fact, VTrans, who administers the earmark that Sean just mentioned, was encouraging us to, because that parking lot has been designed for a number of years, and they've been pushing us to get that project done, and then started to threaten us with, if you don't get it done, then we're going to look back at other money you spent in that earmark, and maybe you need to pay it back. So those town funds that we have committed, we need to spend them on that project.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for bringing this up, and thank you, Eric, and thank you, Sean, for your information on the LVRT. There is this handout.
State your name, please.
Sorry. I'm Andrea Breitenbach. I live on Bridgman Hill. Lucky me. Great roads up there this year. Thank you for that. So the LVRT has a website, as does the Friends of the LVRT. Those two websites are on this handout. The bottom line for this to happen, and for it to happen this year in the legislative session, is for those of us in these towns and all towns in Vermont to get the economic impact, is to support the trail and let our legislators know that we support this funding. And that's critical. It's timely. It's got to happen now, like in the next week or two, as they go through the budget and take things out and put things in and adjust here and there. So we've got a lot of information today from people who are well-versed. Here is the handout. It's in the back, but I also will walk through and pass it out if people want it. So thank you very much for listening to all this information. It's really exciting for the town of Hardwick and the surrounding towns. Picture of the map on here, all the towns that will be affected. I'll walk through and pass it out. Where did you go with this?
Thank you, Andrea.
Anybody have any other questions for me?
Any questions in regards to Sean's report? Thank you, Sean. Eric, were you going to speak to that one?
Ray Bellavance. Are these trails open to four-wheelers?
The LVRT is not currently open to four-wheelers.
But they are right for snowmobiles, but not four-wheelers?
That's a correct statement. They are. They would be a part of the vast trail network moving forward.
If we could hold off on any more questions on the rail trail, we will be discussing that specifically in Article 21. Oh, I'm sorry. If we could hold off on any more discussion on specifically the rail trail, because that'll be discussed later in Article 21 in its entirety. Any other questions for Sean? If not, then Eric is going to do a brief overview of the actual town budget. Yes, ma'am. Just one moment, please, so we can all hear you. Name?
Norma Spalding. I would like to hear more about the new position that's proposed.
That'll be coming up in Eric's presentation.
Okay.
Okay? And then if you have questions that he doesn't answer, we'll take them. Eric?
All right. I'd like to go through a little bit of the budget, the highlights version. So I'd like to call everyone's attention to page 8, the bottom of the page 8, where it says budget summary. And Casey has kindly put it up on the projector as well. And I just want to go through in some very broad strokes, just the overview of what's driving the changes in the departments. So first up, the highway department. You'll see we have a sizable increase there. That's mostly driven by increases in health insurance, and we also added some money for brush cutting, which Sean mentioned in his report. And there were increases in several line items in that budget just to adjust to the last actuals. So that's something the select board tries to do every year, is adjust our proposed budget to what our last actual numbers were for things like fuel, salt, sand, just to try to make it realistic. So the police department, you'll see there's a decrease in that budget, mostly due to decreases in insurances. A lot of health insurance decrease there. Even though for most of us, the $3.5 million seems like a huge budget in the grand scheme, it's small enough that it's significantly affected when one employee either picks up health insurance, like their spouse or significant other dropped theirs or lost a job, so they need to add the town insurance, or maybe they drop off the town insurance because they take their spouse's insurance, or employees leave or are hired and have different insurance needs, and those make fairly dramatic swings in our budget. And anyway, that's one of the things we're seeing in the police budget this year, is a decrease in health insurance. Next is the office expenses. Mostly changes there are changes in salaries and insurance. Payroll. This is where we have the addition that Norma Spalding just brought up. We have an addition of a community development coordinator. We're envisioning that as a part-time, half-time position, no benefits. We've budgeted about $30,000 for that. And the idea with that position is that we have been doing a fair amount of work on some projects that are a little bit beyond the scope of what was traditionally the folks in the town manager's office. So we've been participating in this Yellow Barn project that has been mentioned, trying to push the rail trail forward, working with library folks to try to do the library expansion. And there are a lot of fairly significant projects where we're trying to leverage significant federal funding, and it turns out it takes a fair amount of time to plan and organize and put these projects together. And we have a few other ideas moving forward for projects that are kind of in the offing. We, for example, are just starting this year the process of planning for new town garage and changes in that area. We're going to start with just planning for that first, and then try to envision what that is, and then try to figure out how we're going to raise funds for that. We also, the town owns some land in the southern part of the village that could potentially be developed for more business park or manufacturing. That's a whole project that we'd like to have a little more town support. I know that some people may feel that we don't need to add more folks to the town government, but I think the select board has decided that it's time to add just a half-time position to try to take on some of this workload. Anyway, that's that, and we can take questions after. Also, so where was I? Payroll. So that was in the payroll thing. Also in there are the reason that it doesn't look like $30,000 of addition is we also pulled out of there most of the listers' payroll, and because the listers have now hired an assessor, so the listers themselves, their payroll has gone down, but in the line items, that has gone up because that's where the assessor services, which is listed as Lister Professional Services, now resides. Fire department has gone down. That's largely because we moved the bond payments out of that budget and we moved them into a new fire capital budget. So what we're trying to do is the bond didn't get organized for today due to a little glitch, but we are planning in a month or so to have a bond for a new fire truck. What we decided at the select board was that, boy, we save in capital funds for almost everything else, so why do we go to bond and borrow money for fire trucks? So what we're going to try to do, we started a new fire capital equipment budget, and we're going to start saving for fire trucks instead of borrowing. So in the that shows up, there's a big increase in line items, and most of that is that change where we're trying to, so it's two things. We move the existing bond payments from the fire department budget into the line items, which funds the capital budget. And so in addition to moving the existing bond payments, we also added more money in order to start saving so that in the future we don't have to go to bond for fire trucks. That's my highlights version. I hope that I hope it made things clearer and not more confusing. So, questions?
Are there any specific, this is the non-highway turn.
Oh, down at the bottom, sorry.
New equipment gets me. Are there any questions specific to the budget?
Brad Ferlin again. So I understand what you're saying with the fire trucks, but does the amount of money that we're putting toward future purchases of fire trucks get us to the point where next fire truck that we purchase, we will have enough cash on hand, or will we have to bond for that next one?
I think that Casey's bringing it up. I think the next one we have cash for, correct? Yeah, so currently we have a bond outstanding that we're making payments on. We're voting on another one in about a month for another fire truck. And after that, the budget allows for us to buy them outright at I think it's a roughly 15-year interval. I'd have to look on the report.
I was just informed that vote will be April 7th.
April 7th.
And it'll be where, Alberta? At the Memorial Building, but it'll be warned in the Gazette and around town.
Oh. News and Citizen, it'll be warned.
And also in the News and Citizen. Any other questions for Eric in regards to the budget? Okay, thank you, Eric.
Yep.
They are now as tall as Eric. Any other discussion in regards to Article 5 on the budget? All those in favor of the town voting a budget of $3,465,120 to meet the expenses and liabilities of the town and authorize the select board to set a new tax rate sufficient to provide the same, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. Article 6, shall the town of Hardwick enter into a communication union district, a CUD, to be known as the Northeast Kingdom Community Broadband under the provisions of 30 Vermont statutes annotated, Chapter 82. What is your pleasure? Do you move the motion? I have a motion to approve Article 6. Is there a second? And a second. And yes, Jake. Jake wished to be recognized. He's the one that made the motion, so he gets the floor. So we need the mic to Jake, and he will explain it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jake Lester, East Hardwick. So I'm talking about the CUD, Communications Union District. Basically, this is an opportunity for us all to join together with 27 other towns in the Northeast Kingdom to form basically a communications union district. Will let us have collective input and kind of negotiation power with getting better internet to everyone in our town and other places in the NEK. Basically, we all know that a lot of our internet is pretty terrible. It's hard to download things that you might need. You might need to access, go on Netflix, make a call from your house, whatever it is. And then the other factor in that is there's only one option in a lot of places in town for you to buy internet from the provider, and so you don't have any choices in what you get if you want better, if you don't want to pay as much. So basically, by joining the CUD, this Communications Union District, we can have a seat at the table to talk to providers, get infrastructure built that would give us the option of having faster, more affordable internet to everyone's house. And the goal of this CUD would be to get 100% of coverage and have that option for really great high-speed internet to all the 911 addresses. So a few factors that I know people are probably thinking about. Does this cost the town money? No, it doesn't cost the town money. Do you have to buy internet if you don't really want it? No, you don't have to buy into internet. This is also not like saying it's going to be one type of internet provided to us. So I heard someone was wondering about 5G. This does not mean we're trying to put in 5G or anything like that. Most likely this would be getting ground-based infrastructure like fiber optic or even just better cable internet to everyone's house. And the job of this Communications Union District is that there are a bunch of, it'll be, consulting with experts to figure out what the best option is. So we probably won't be looking at 5G anytime soon anyway. So if that's a concern. So I'd really encourage everyone to support this. If we do support it, the next step is that we get together with all the other towns. Hardwick would have a representative in that discussion, and we'd have a lot better negotiation and buying power to these providers who leave us all behind, basically, because there's, it's not ideal for them to provide to one town. So we have a lot better leverage with them, better leverage with pricing, and then we also, just have the opportunity to get everyone here better internet. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Jake.
I'm Rose Friedman from East Hardwick, and I have a couple of questions about it that I couldn't find the answers to in any of the online materials. With the fiber optics, my understanding is that there needs to be some sort of tower for the signal to come out to. I'm just wondering basically about the process of this going in and how people continue to be informed about where the stuff is placed. And this representative that sits on the committee or on the board of the CUD, how that person is put into place and how they communicate with the town. And if the things that are going in, if there are indeed towers or signals that need to be put into place, is that going through some commission that the town oversees, or is that just its own process that has nothing to do with the select board?
Eric, has any of that been discussed at the select board level?
Just with the representative.
Okay, I'll answer what I can answer, and then
Just a minute, Jake. Jake has already spoke to this. Is there any objection to his being the answering person, as he seems to know more about it than anybody else does? Okay, go ahead, Jake.
I'll speak to what I can. As far as so questions about fiber, like fiber optic internet, the towers and signals, and kind of the pure infrastructure side of it. Basically, the CUD, the board of representatives from each town, so our representative would be on that. They're going out to basically do studies on what will be the best way to provide it, the internet service. So it may end up being fiber optic, it may end up being tower-based, but that's going to vary depending on the geography, the location, everything. So at this point, we don't really know exactly what it would be, but the only way to have input on that from Hardwick would be for us to be a part of the Union District. As in, if we weren't part of it, the surrounding towns who do vote to be part of it would be having that discussion, and then we'd be kind of left out of it for the area. And then I probably can't speak so much as from the town level how the infrastructure would be managed, but the NEK Community Broadband, which would be the name of the Communications Union District, would be doing the installations and stuff, and I'm sure they'd work with the town on that. Maybe you can speak better to that.
So I don't really know much more about this than what's been presented and what I've read in the Vermont statutes, but I think that the select board would appoint a person to represent the town on this board, and that person would report back to the select board at regular intervals, and that would be an opportunity for reporting back. I haven't heard any discussion about towers, because I think the speeds they're trying to achieve currently are best achieved with wires, either fiber optic or copper or cable. But
any other questions? Rose? Anyone else before Rose? Yeah, we have a gentleman in the back.
Hi, Mike DeMarco, East Hardwick. I just wanted to ask about federal funding, because that's something that you didn't really mention. And as I understood it, the point of the whole thing was forming a collective to be able to apply for federal funding, since most of the towns can't afford to provide this infrastructure on their own, that with a collective it would be better and easier to apply for federal funding, which would then cover a lot of the costs, and that we wouldn't have to, of course, then
Thank you.
have all the costs.
And Jake is shaking his head yes. Yes. You might as well stay right up there, Jake.
Sure.
Because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, the federal funding, basically in the next year, there's $20 billion in grants available through federal funding. That's like FCC, USDA, EDA, and the Vermont Connectivity Fund. So there's a lot of federal funding, especially available in the next calendar year. And part of getting this done now is that we want to be able to access some of those funds. And that way it'll bring the cost down of building out these infrastructure, which are really costly. So yes, lots of grants available.
Okay, Rose, or before Rose, the lady here in the front hasn't spoken.
Hi, my name is Emily Langsner. I'm a Hardwick resident. I just wanted to say, I don't know if everyone here is aware that there's a significant danger of 5G cell service. It's been shown in, I don't know, thousands of studies to be very dangerous for pollinators, birds, and people's health. There's a lot of documentation about that. And I think because there's such an aggressive industry mandate to try to get 5G everywhere, there's putting satellites to broadcast 5G from the sky. It's pretty aggressive. And I think that if we do vote, which I think it sounds like a good idea, to have input in a regional board that tries to include people in this process of making decisions, that we should know who is speaking to this and have a process where our community can weigh in on this, because I think it's a very big health issue that we shouldn't just think that somebody on the select board is going to be speaking to this. We should know who is speaking to this and what their input actually is.
Thank you. Rose?
I guess I still feel like a bit unanswered and a bit uncomfortable with what I feel like is just unclear to me. If we are, by saying yes to this, giving a green light to the CUD to make all the decisions about whatever they feel is the appropriate way to install this technology. It's a little worrisome to me because if they do decide, as Jake suggested, that it might be best for there to be towers, it's very difficult at that point for the public to register any concerns that they might have about the placement of the towers or the effect of the towers on the health of animals, people. And that is mostly in thanks to the Telecommunications Act, which wouldn't allow us, of 1996, which wouldn't allow us to register those concerns at a hearing specifically about the placement of the towers. So that's why I bring it up now, because I don't want us to find ourselves there a few years down the road, unable to discuss these issues. So while it does sound like a good idea, I just want some reassurance that there's going to be a way in which we can have a say as a community about where those towers are placed and how the whole process works.
Eric?
So my understanding is that creating this communication district is a little bit akin to creating like a public utility. And so other towns are voting on this today as well, and we could opt to be part of it, in which case we have a voice and we can experience the benefits of potentially of better internet connections. We could also opt not to be part of it, in which case Hardwick doesn't have a voice and isn't really on a list to be served by any build out. And I think the other thing that's worthy is in the presentation to the select board. It was Catherine Sims, is that correct? From Northeast Kingdom Collaborative who came, and she indicated that, I mean, as Jake is saying, it's unclear what the exact recommendation will be to do any sort of build out. But looking at what's currently available and where any infrastructure would have to extend from, it's likely that some infrastructure would extend from Hardwick because we already have fiber into the town, and fiber was the primary goal, I think. So I think the options are to join this district, have a say, potentially benefit from it, or not join it, not have a say.
But didn't you
And-
say the person would be reporting back to the select board?
Correct. I mean, it's somebody who would be nominated to represent us, and it could be anybody.
Sir?
Dave Gross, East Hardwick. On that question of the representative, once the representative is appointed by you, is it going to be an independent person, much like the relationship with HED? Or is it going to be somebody who's going to answer directly to the select board and carry out the decisions and wishes of the select board and communicate it forward?
Good question.
Good question. I'd have to go, it's been a while since I read the statute, but I don't recall. So HED in statute in the town charter, it says that it defines how Hardwick Electric is, the board of directors is to be appointed, and that they can only be removed for cause. I didn't see any language like that in just nominating a representative to the CUD board. Yeah, so, yeah, Sherry's pointing out that the commissioners, the electric department commissioners are appointed for like multi-year seats, and they're tasked with running the electric department. This is just, it's somebody who's nominated to or instructed to go be our representative on this board. So I would assume, I don't see any reason why that person would not be directly responsible back to the board, and the board is directly responsible back to you all.
Ma'am?
Tracy Martin, East Hardwick. So playing out the scenario, this group of people, the various representatives meet, study the issue for a year or two, come back with recommendations. At that point, does each town have the option to say, yes, we want to go with that, or no, we don't? In other words, they're just making recommendations, and then we get another opportunity to decide if we want to opt out or be involved? Is that how it works?
Where did Jake go?
Where'd Jake go?
Oh, there he is. He
I'm
moved.
not sure. I thought this was it. I thought this was our opting in or opting
So
out.
whatever they recommend, we're in it? So in other words,
Yeah,
whatever they come back as recommending as the solution for getting the best broadband, we don't get if they recommend 3 towers or whatever,
Right.
we have to go with that at that point? Or can we say, well,
That's my understanding, but I don't have a definitive answer on that. I mean, I think it's a little
Jake,
like
do you
if-
know?
Basically, my understanding is that first of all, to answer some other questions, there will be at the first meeting of the Communications Union District with all the representatives from towns. That'll be in May, and they'll establish bylaws at that meeting to govern how they conduct going forward. So that would be the place where they would establish the relationship of the representatives, what type of decision-making powers and what process they go through with those decisions. And then to answer kind of once those decisions are made, it would be the nature of the union district, and we've talked about it a little bit, like how it relates to a water district, a union water district or union electric district, whatever. The nature would be that they would either be the internet provider or be or contract with other providers. So, for example, there's another CUD that was established called EC Fiber, and they build out the system, and then subscribers decide if they want to, buy into it. And in a way, I think it would be similar. So, not necessarily that the town has to take recommendations, but in a similar way that any other provider is already building out infrastructure, kind of like how they're already consolidated, already builds fiber here. imagine the same kind of process there. It's like they have to go through a permitting process with the town to use town land. They have to go through all the regulations of the town. So it's kind of like as though they were, they make a recommendation, but they have to go through all the same processes that anyone else building infrastructure, any other consolidated building infrastructure has to go through before they put up a tower, which in the end comes down to the permitting and everything. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
Emily from Hardwick, Emily Langsner. I'm just wondering, does it make sense, since we're all here, can we actually, if we vote to say yay or nay to this recommendation, or can we actually choose somebody to represent our town on this?
That is not warned, so no, we cannot do that.
Okay.
The only thing that we can do is do what is in Article 6, to either enter into the CUD or to vote it down. So what is on the floor and before you is to vote yes for the article and no for the article.
And can you repeat the language of the article, please?
The article states, shall the town of Hardwick enter into a communication union district known as a CUD to be known as the Northeast Kingdom Community Broadband under the provisions of 30 Vermont Statutes annotated Chapter 82. And in reading somewhere, does it state that, or is it just understood that the select board would appoint a representative? Is it specific or is it stated? And you would be asking for volunteers.
I have the statutes in front of me. I can answer this with the language of the statutes.
Briefly, please. We don't need to read the whole statute, Paul.
Annually, on or before the last Monday in April, commencing in the year following the effective date of the district's creation. So that would be assuming the district gets created by 2 or more towns,
today,
including Hardwick today, which is all it takes to create it. In April, you folks will have the chance to appoint a representative and 1 or more alternates.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other new questions? Brad? Oh, just a minute. Eric wishes to speak to that. Then you can wait, Brad, if you want. Okay.
Just quickly, if the town does approve this today, then anyone who's interested in serving on this board, if you could please send a letter of interest to the town manager's office, that would be perfect.
Okay, thank you. Brad?
I don't have a question per se, but I would just like to stand up and say that I support this. That as part of the Northeast Kingdom, we are challenged, unlike other parts of the state, in terms of having access to high-speed internet access. And it is working against us. There are those that do and those that don't, and we are those that don't. And from an economic perspective, we are at a disadvantage because of that. So for anything we can do to put us in a better economic position to basically help people move and stay in the Northeast Kingdom. I mean, there are so many aspects of the Northeast Kingdom that are impacted by not having internet access. Whether it's families leaving the Northeast Kingdom because of it, our school populations are dropping, we have businesses that are shuttering because of it, that we need to do everything we possibly can to help stimulate our economy. And this is one step that at this point is harmless in doing so. So I strongly encourage it.
Anything new? Sir?
Gary Michaels, East Hardwick. I'll second what Brad just said. That'll shorten this dramatically. It appears that we have some valid...
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, it appears that we have some valid concerns. So my question to Eric is, how do we determine one representative that represents a cross-section of the town's interests? And is it permissible, based on the statute, to appoint more than one representative for Hardwick?
I think to answer the second part first, what Paul just read is the select board would appoint one representative and one alternate. And as far as how do you choose someone, we would follow the same process we use for any appointment, which is we solicit letters of interest to the town manager's office. We then invite those people to come to the board, we talk to them, and the board makes the decision that we feel is in the best interest of the town.
Anything new, sir? Just a minute, Rose. Yep.
Hi, my name is Dave Kaczynski. It sounds like we got a lot of carts out in front of the horse here. It seems like what this is asking us today is for us to have a set of eyes and a set of ears at an important table to be at, and I'd like to call this motion based on that. Thanks.
Okay, I have a motion to call the question. I need a 2/3 vote, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hands because I'm not going to get into a hollering match. All those in favor of calling the question now, please raise your hands. Those opposed? I declare a 2/3, and we will call the question. Discussion has ended. Thank you. The Article 6 reads, shall the town of Hardwick enter into a communication union district known as a CUD to be known as the Northeast Kingdom Community Broadband under the provisions of 30 Vermont Statutes Annotated Chapter 2. I'm also going to ask for a show of hands. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Abstentions? And the motion carries. Thank you. Currently, our representative Chip Torono has arrived. He is not a Hardwick resident. Is there any objection to Chip having some time with our voters? Hearing none. Chip, welcome. And as you know, Hardwick just joined the Northeast Kingdom Communication Broadband to put pressure on the state.
Okay.
Let me get rid of this for you.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks, Arise. It's really good to be here. Thanks for listening to me. Hello to all the Board of Selectmen, the Chief, Town Manager, and again, thanks very much for being here. I just wanted to say a few words about what I do when you send me to Montpelier. And I guess, I get a feeling that it's not a really well-known thing, but, for me, this is hard work. This is 10 and 12-hour days. This is a voluminous amount of reading and research that we have to do on our own. We have no staff. We have no benefits. We don't get paid if we're not there. So I'm not looking for any kind of recognition. I'm just kind of letting you folks know what happens when I drive down to Montpelier every Tuesday. And sometimes when I drive back on Friday, I'm doing fist pumps because I feel that we have done things that will benefit the citizens of Vermont. And that's what I'm there for. So a few things. I'm a member of the Working Vermonters Caucus, so anytime that an issue will come before the legislature that involves working Vermonters, I come down on the side of working Vermonters. So there are three things that happened in the past year, and I'll just briefly cover them. One was a paid family leave bill. The governor vetoed it, and we failed to override the veto by one vote. We received 99 votes. 99 votes is a pretty substantial, out of 149 members, is a fairly substantial amount of support for something like that. When I go to Montpelier, the thing that has struck me even more and more every year is the competing interests that we're asked to weigh in on when we consider a bill. And the competing interests can come from lots of different places. They can come from the Democrats, the Republicans, the progressives. They can come from lobbyists and advocates that come to the State House every day to let us know what their position is. So sometimes it's a pretty difficult thing to consider. And paid family leave was one of those. Paid family leave had the governor's plan, which was a voluntary plan, and the legislator's plan, which was an all-inclusive plan. Think in terms of insuring 8,500 people as opposed to 300,000 people. Where do you think that premium, if we're looking for insurance, where do you think that premium is going to come down? It's going to come down when you insure 300,000 people. And for 0.2% of what you make, you could have a very generous benefit, 12 weeks of family leave to bond with a new child. Young families, I go out into the community and speak to young families with children, and they tell me all the time, I say, what will keep you in Vermont? What will bring young people to Vermont? Because we keep hearing about them leaving all the time. So I'm asking people, what will happen? What will this be? And they say, better pay, paid family leave, and better child care. So those are the three issues that dominated much of what I did in the past 2 years. Paid family leave and minimum wage came out of the committee I work on. I'm the vice chair of the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee. I'm the vice chair of the Judicial Retention Committee, and I serve on Working Vermonters Caucus, Environmental Caucus, and the Older Vermonters Caucus. So my priorities remain older Vermonters, opioids, and the problems that they've caused our state. Housing, we still have over 1,000 Vermonters that are homeless in the state of Vermont. I find that unacceptable. I find that we need to work on that. So how do we do that? So we missed the boat on paid family leave. So the end result of that was that all state workers, I'm not opposed to it. I think everyone should get this benefit. So I'm not suggesting that I have displeasure with state workers getting this benefit, but it came to them at no cost and a cost of $2.6 million to Vermonters. So that was the end result. So all these folks weren't. So in the administration's plan, it would take 2 years for anybody to be able to buy into this plan, and it would buy in at a premium at a cost of 15% more in the premium than state workers would have been paying. So it would have been more expensive for the same benefits, and it would be fewer benefits, and it would not cover nearly as many people. So I came down on the side of all Vermonters, creating a huge benefit pool that would allow people to take time to care for their sick parents, their sick in-laws, their children, their brothers and their sisters, in the event that that happens, for our children to be able to care for us when they need to. And that's where I came down. The second piece was minimum wage. We did manage 100 votes, and we rode the governor's veto on that. What it does is we missed the mark on $15 an hour. It came out of our committee at $15 an hour in 2024. Then it went to 2026 out of Appropriations Committee, and then it went to the Senate and came back to us at $12.55 by 2022. So it's a relatively modest increase. 50,000 Vermonters get a pay raise as a result of this. They find that they're able to pay their medical bills, pay their car repairs, easier time paying their rent. So this again was something that I paid a lot of attention to. It came out of our committee. We heard hours and hours of testimony, and you know what? Even businesses that came to us and told us they didn't support this minimum wage increase, when I asked them personally, do you agree that when you pay your employees better, you get better productivity? And every single one of them said, yes. So it's a fact that when you pay your employees and you care for your employees, you get better production, your business does better, and it's an end result that everyone wins. The third piece that I paid close attention with didn't come out of our committee, it came out of Human Services Committee. Last year we put $10.5 million into child care. And what did we find? We found that we didn't have, well, first of all, we knew that people my age that run daycares are aging out. They're not able to care for young children anymore. So that put a real hole in our network of daycare providers. We need daycare providers. Daycare cost is really phenomenal. When you hear that someone who makes maybe $50,000 a year, you think that's a good salary? If they have 2 children, they're paying $400 a week to take care of those children at their child care. So what did we need to do? We needed to attract new providers. We needed to incentivize younger people to go into this business. And when we did that, we found that there were not enough people for them to hire to provide quality daycare. So that's a second hole that we approached. So from there, we asked Vermont Technical College to provide a training program that will train young people to come in and work in these daycares. So we're trying to put it all together. The last piece was a piece that would enlarge the eligibility for families to be able to afford to put their child in daycare so that they're not paying outrageous amounts of money and they can't pay their bills either. So that's the three pieces that were most important to me in the past 2 years. We continue to fight the opioid epidemic by keeping medically assisted treatment, putting innovative treatment systems in place, and if there's a gauge, I guess, sad but true, the number of overdoses have gone down in Vermont in the past year. Sad way to appraise this situation. We passed the Global Solutions Warming Act, okay? So we found that the contacts that we had were overwhelming in support of Vermont taking some action to put some kind of a control, or not control, but to make our climate goals that the governor agreed to, which were formulated by the Paris Accords nationally. Our country pulled out of them. Our governor said, yes, we're going to follow these. But nothing happened in the next 2 years. So this Global Warming Solution Act does not raise taxes. It's not a carbon tax. It forms committees and to dig down and to find out how we can cut our carbon footprint, because we have lost ground in the past 3 years. Since the governor committed to this, we have actually lost ground per capita to Maine, to Massachusetts, and to New York. So Vermont now falls behind in their carbon footprint. And that's what people have noticed, and that's what people have contacted us. Overwhelming support. That bill passed with 105 yay votes on the floor of the House out of 149. That's a good, strong support, and it's a veto-proof bill. The other piece, we did streamline for renters. We streamlined a process for renters rebate by making it a little bit easier for landlords to make their claim and to get together with their tenants, and for their tenants to use it, because we found that the program in its entirety was underused. So we're trying to get to a place where if you rent and you pay a certain percentage of your income on rent, then you could qualify for a rebate, and we've made that process much easier for both the landlords and the tenants. I guess that's about what I have. Any questions I would open up to? Yes, Emily?
I understand that you passed a pollinator protection bill in the last session, and I was wondering if you could explain that and also let everyone know about what the next step is as far as pollinator protection legislation.
Thanks for that question. Last year I sponsored a bill that would have taken neonicotinoid pesticides off the shelves of our hardware stores. In doing so, we received unanimous votes out of every committee that it went to, probably 5 or 6, and both sides of the House and Senate, and a unanimous vote on the floor of both houses and signed by the governor. So we understand that neonicotinoids are a huge problem for pollinators, and pollinators pollinate our food, and we all know that, and it's critical that we have done this. So this year I passed, or I should say I submitted a bill. We found that 95% of feed corn and soybean seeds are treated with up to 6 different pesticides and herbicides. And neonicotinoids is always on that list. So what we're trying to do is not ban them, but we're trying to ask agriculture or farmers to present a case in which they can show that their crop damage would benefit from the use of this pesticide. That's all this bill does, and it's gotten much better. There was a companion bill presented by Senator Polina on the Senate side, and that side seems to be making progress, while my bill on the House side is not. So I do believe that it'll make crossover, which is next week. That's a time when bills have to pass back and forth between the houses, and it's a deadline so that nothing can pass between them after that date. And we expect to see the bill from the Senate to the House so that they can make any changes that are needed to be made and compromise on that. That's where we're at right now with that. There was some interest from some people on the Act 250 bill that was coming up. I see Mary standing in the back. Do you have a question on it? Or so this, again, is a piece for, how am I doing for time, okay? You're doing good. Okay. So this is a piece of legislation. 50 years ago, Governor Dean Davis and then State Senator Jim Jeffords proposed Act 250. Act 250 was made or geared for environmental protection for rural lands in Vermont. I guess it depends on who you ask as to how effective it's been over the past 50 years, but there are many who thought that it was time to make some changes in it. Making those changes became a huge conflicting interests amongst environmentalists, housing developers, and some others that either liked or didn't like the bill. So the final compromise is the biggest issue was the district commissions. Presently, Act 250 allows for citizen input. So if a slate quarry is down the road from your home, and they put a petition in to open or to reopen that slate quarry that's been dormant for 20 years, and you live on that road, and you know that 10-wheelers are going to be trafficking up and down your road, destroying the road and kicking up dust and creating a problem for your way of living, then you had a right to go into that hearing and oppose that. Those district commissions were run by volunteers. Those volunteers stayed on that job for years and became very well adept at Act 250 proceedings. And one of them lives just south of here in Woodbury. So I consulted a number of people on this bill, and we actually, at the last minute on the floor, we passed a number of compromise amendments that seemed to make a lot of people happy. We put the district commission, it was suggested that the district commissions be eliminated and that a professional board be appointed to make these hearings. That would have eliminated, the legalese involved would have eliminated citizen participation in those events. And it would have cost the state of Vermont $640,000 to pay these people every year to make these decisions. So many people were very happy or content with putting these district commissions back in. Another piece from around here and from the southern Green Mountains was an elevation piece. It was recommended at first that development under 1,500 feet or above 1,500 feet was not allowed. Well, that didn't receive a lot. I live over 1,500 feet myself. So I want to build a garage, if I want to build a barn, if I want to do things like that, it would have triggered an Act 250 permit. So then they raised it to 2,000 feet. That also created, there are towns in southern Green Mountains that the entire towns are over 2,000 feet. So that created a problem. So currently it's at 2,500 feet. On a unanimous vote on an amendment, it was put back to 2,500 feet. Some people weren't happy with that, some people were. But it was a unanimous vote to allow that to happen. For developers, we have eased some of the permitting processes for urban areas and downtown development. A lot of people were happy with that. It was an okay thing. It actually does concentrate development a little bit out of your rural areas. It prevents forest fragmentation, which is which had many environmental concerns and wildlife preservation concerns. So maintaining our forest without fragmentation is an important piece, I think it was to everyone there, and that was important also, and that passed. So, that's what we did with Act 250. Not everyone's happy, but not everyone's mad. So when you drive home after you pass a bill like that with 88 or 90 votes, I think, then again, you kind of do a fist pump and say, okay, we got something done today, and there are residents of Vermont that will benefit from what we did. So any other questions that I'd answer? Yeah, Eric. Oh, rail trails. Okay, yes, thanks for reminding me. So the governor proposed $2.8 million to develop rail trails. We all know that the rail trail would go directly through Hardwick. The newspaper piece in the Gazette by, I can't think of his name right off, yes, that talked about a trail system being completed just across the border in Quebec, and bringing huge amounts of economic impact to that area. People coming to ride their bicycles and using their restaurants and their facilities there. So on $2.8 million that the governor proposed would lever into, I think, about $11 million when you match it with federal funds. So it was an important piece. It was important to all of us in the Northeast Kingdom, all the legislators from St. Johnsbury, all the way through down into Woodbury. We all signed a letter of recommendation to the Corrections and Institutions Committee to support this. Corrections and Institutions Committee control the capital budget. Capital budget is what would pay for this. So at this point, we heard from the chair of the committee the other day, and they understand and realize the importance and the possibilities of economic development in this particular area of this rail trail, and the amount of money that can be put in. And it will take a project that would have taken 20 years, and they'll move it to a 5-year project. So right now, the plan is that there would be about $750,000 a year allocated to this. The feds would match that with an unknown amount at this point. I think there was some issues with who would actually run the construction. That's going to be worked out, and the trail will come from Danville, West Danville, where it is right now at Joe's Pond, and it'll run right through here, and it'll go to Swanton. And you can ride from St. Johnsbury to Swanton on your bicycle, and it will bring lots of people to the area, and it's really a good proposal, and I support it 1,000%. That it? Did that cover it? Okay.
There were other hands up?
Yes, okay. David?
David, if you'd use the mic.
Thank you.
David Shepard. Yes. I'm all for streamlining Act 250 with a professional board, but I'm surprised that everybody was on board and happy that sounds like you'd be eliminating citizen input with a professional board.
It would have, yes. That was the primary concern with that piece of the legislation, David. Well, it wouldn't eliminate it, but when citizens got to there would be professionals in there, and the legalese and the terminology and the involvement that would have resulted from that professional board was the concern of the people, of many people that came to me and suggested, hey, this is not right. The district boards supply actually help and support for citizens that want to come and be heard on environmental issues that it would impact their living.
You can still comment, but you'll be talking to professionals, not citizens.
Right. That would be the difference. And we would be paying the professionals $640,000 a year to do that job. Beg pardon?
Not a piece.
No, not a piece.
So at what point are the citizens providing input?
Because the boards are remaining.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I help a little?
Yes.
I believe there's a little misunderstanding. This is Mary Gagnon of Hardwick. I think there might be a slight misunderstanding that people think that the original 926 plan was to do away with the local boards, and that got amended.
Right.
And I don't know that that got made clear, that it was
That's
amended
correct.
to keep the local boards. Some of the power, if I'm understanding it correctly, went more to the district that had been local, some of the more complicated legal parts of
Correct.
things. But for sort of run-of-the-mill, if there is such a thing, 250 hearings, there still is a localized district.
Right. So citizens now have let's put it this way, citizens have an easier time now to be heard in front of these volunteer district boards than they would have if we had professional paid board members at a more regional level also. So your local boards would have been eliminated, and those boards would have went regional with professionals, so citizen input would have been more difficult than it will be at now as a result of this modification.
And I think this harkens back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier with the CUD, is having some district control in our area is a good thing, but it's also something we want to be certain that we understand when we have the more localized control versus when it starts getting away from us. So, for whatever part that plays in that too.
Thank you, Mary.
Any other questions for Chip? I have one over here. Ma'am, if you'd go to the mic, please.
Nancy Shade, Hardwick. Chip, we talked about something at the farmer's market once, and it regards the homeless and the opioid addicted people. We might have even more if we pass the bill about marijuana. But if we could do a state-of-the-art center at the Windsor Farm Prison, which doesn't have bars on it. It was for moderate prisoners. Yep. Lots of acreage where people could learn to farm. If we could do that in the future with the help of the government, the federal government, and have Vermont be the top state for really addressing this difficult problem for people that have no place to go and don't even know how to get there. Give guidance, and we could have plenty of people to hire. I know it would cost a lot of money. I don't know where money comes from in government, but that's... I
have an idea where it comes
when
from.
you get a chance to talk about the housing and the opioid, could you please bring that up?
Yeah.
Just in case.
It's great that you brought that up, Nancy, because right now we're facing a situation in which Woodside Juvenile Rehabilitation Center is being closed. Mm-hmm. So there's a vacant building there. As you mentioned, Windsor is closed. And Brattleboro Retreat is in serious financial trouble right now. So starting with Brattleboro Retreat is the only facility in the state of Vermont that will treat dual diagnosis. So if you have a mental health issue and a substance use issue, that's where you go. So the question now is, does the state bail out Brattleboro Retreat, as we have with the Veterans Home in the past, and tell them or recognize where their problems are and ask them to fix them so that they're financially solvent and we don't have to support them anymore? But I think it's very important that we keep Brattleboro Retreat open. And I do agree with you. I think that the Windsor Prison would be ideal place to do that. And I haven't brought it up, but I will.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the back, there's two ladies.
Hello there. I'm Heather Bryant of Hardwick. Hi, Chip.
Hi.
I was curious if there was anything in the House about the recycling programs in the state and if they are actually still in place. If Sherry Cornish can speak to anything about being on the board. I was our Hardwick representative for the Central Vermont Solid Waste District back in 2012 when we made a 5-year plan for recycling to be the law. From 2012 to 2017, here it is 2020, and the rumors are that recycling isn't actually happening, that it's all just being taken to Casella's landfill in Coventry, and I wondered if there's any talk about that in the House, or if you can shed a light on where we're at with recycling and if the cost has again fallen on the consumer. And if there's anything about, back then we talked about manufacturer increased responsibility instead of the cost of recycling always falling on the consumer. Anything?
Well, most of you, I would imagine, know that we banned the single-use plastic bag. We banned styrofoam food containers and styrofoam cups and plastic straws last year. That will go into effect this July 1. So we're trying to keep things that take years and years and years, or actually never go away, out of the landfill. And that's one of the measures that we did take last year to do that. You're right. People have come to me and they've asked about, well, let me also say this, that the trash haulers come to the State House every year on a day, and they tell us, we don't want to pick up food scraps. That's a pain in the neck for us. We don't want to do it. We have to change our trucks. It's going to cost us money. So from there, we have a business right in Stannard called Black Dirt Farm. And Black Dirt Farm does a circuit around Hardwick area here, and they compost and bag it and sell it as black dirt, and it is a fabulous compost. They also raise chickens on it. So what has happened in that area that I'm working on is I submitted a bill this year because because they're a composting facility, the Agency of Natural Resources is trying to take control over their operations. But in reality, they're raising chickens. He raises lots of broilers and lots of layers. He sells his eggs, really nice, good eggs, around here at our local markets and whatnot. So I'm looking at it as a position where we have a need, and that is that our haulers don't want to take these table scraps. And we have a solution of businesses now, and there are more than I thought there were. Black dirt is not the only one. They're scattered all throughout the area. And if we can take those table waste and convert them to a business that will haul these away gladly, process them, feed livestock on them, and the whole thing comes together, whereas we've got a good business here. We're relieving some of the trash haulers from what they object to, and we are supporting a viable business throughout the state of Vermont. And so that's some of the things we've done. I understand that people have also come to me telling me that a lot of our recycling is crushed now and shipped over to Maine, and microplastics are finding their way into the ocean. They're working down the Connecticut River. I was at an event in St. Johnsbury Academy called the Capstone, where seniors have to present research projects, and one of them was microplastics in the Connecticut River. Well, the Connecticut River runs right into Long Island Sound, out into the Atlantic Ocean, and they're finding these microplastics are finding their way all the way from Vermont down the Connecticut River and into that. So that's something we haven't addressed yet. I think there's a lot more talk about it, and there's a lot more recognition of it being a problem, and I think that we'll see some action there in the next few years. I know it's not acceptable, but it's the best we can do. So.
Are we currently composting in our schools in Hazen and Hardwick Elementary? Excellent. Sherry, do you have anything else to add from the Central Vermont Solid Waste District?
Although July 1st on July 1st, it's when home composting of food scraps is supposed to happen. Yes, it is on. But there isn't anything new. I mean, there's still a lot of, I go to All Metals all the time with my recycling and stuff, and I see a lot of contaminated recycling bins, and I don't know what happens with that.
That's what I'm asking about, the mountains of plastic trash.
Yeah, but everybody does what they do. I don't know how to further educate people. I personally feel that the idea of zero waste is misleading because people don't realize that they are still expected to sort some things and not throw trash bags, plastic trash bags full of recycling into that recycling bin. But the Solid Waste District does talk about all this stuff, and they still have all their outreach programs, and the schools are composting, and, our village restaurant is composting, and yeah.
Has the cost of recycling gone up?
I can't really speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Know.
Heather, my report is on the back table, and my contact information is on there. If you want to continue this discussion, I'd be happy to do that with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jennifer? There was a lady before you, though, the one in the back.
Janice Davison of Hardwick. Sorry. I was just curious more about the prisons and stuff with the farm work. I know a lot of schools have low-income people that have kids in school. Mm-hmm. Couldn't that food be put back on the tables for the kids that don't get that reduced food? That some schools say, hey, you can't have hot lunch today because your parents didn't pay.
I've heard about that problem. That is a district issue. That comes up. There are districts that have gone to citizen input and contributions so that they raise a fund so that those children whose families may be in arrears for their lunch are able to pay for them and don't experience the embarrassment and of being shut off or told that they can't have lunch today because their bill is paid. That's a district issue. So you might want to bring that up with your school board. Federal funds that were directed toward that have been redirected, and there is a lacking now. What we're told was that the federal program was very expensive and to just provide free lunch for all students, it hasn't come through. It hasn't happened.
But can we put our prisoners that are in jail that get free lunch to work by giving them barn chores to do, basically, to provide food for our children across the whole America?
Yeah, well, you know, that actually has happened. You know, the work camp in St. Johnsbury at one point had a huge garden, and they did distribute that food to other places and schools. Center for Agricultural Economy now is able to distribute food to, I believe, schools, but nursing homes and hospitals as well, because they're, excuse me, because they're approved to do that. So I think it'll come together. I think that we recognize that there's an issue there. And I think, again, that the best solution for that is in the community where people would come together and try and make it possible for those children to have their lunches paid for, again, without the embarrassment of being turned down for lunch. That's really not a good thing. That's not.
So then again, it's the community and the community and the taxpayers doing it, and not the people in jail that get free food.
No, I can't tell you why they don't farm at the work camp anymore. I can't tell you that. It just stopped.
Jennifer?
Hi, Jennifer Fliegelman, East Hardwick. I just wanted to address the question about recycling, what happens to recycling in Vermont. I'm not an expert on the subject, but Brave Little State, VPR podcast, did a great episode on it a couple months ago. And they looked at where the recycling goes, where different types of recycling go in the state of Vermont. So that's something that, where the question asker was, but that's something you might want to look up if you're interested in where Vermont recycling goes.
Thank you. Yep.
Anything else in regards to CHIP? Sir?
Dave Gross, East Hardwick. Once again, Chip, thank you for what you do. On the recycling and what the state can do as far as legislation, much like plastic bags, we're coming up with spring, green up day. Once again, we're all going to hit the ditches. We're going to pick up all the trash in the ditches. We're going to have a huge collection, and then we're going to do it again next year. I would appreciate it, or I would suggest that the legislature takes a really hard look at the numbers, what we're pulling out of the ditch, and then pass economic disincentives for people to put it in the ditch. And I don't know if it's an extra tax on tires or whatever it is, but based upon the tonnage we're pulling out, what's represented, it's a great sample, go hit that with that economic disincentive to make sure it stays out of our ditches.
We did see a proposal that we expand the bottle redemption to include plastic bottles and whatnot. That hasn't moved any, and so we haven't gained any traction there. But again, when these bills are first introduced, it does present some conversation and recognition of the problem, and oftentimes things materialize from there, and it's a good piece. Actually, tires end up in the ditches and riverbanks because we do charge. There is a charge to get rid of them. So I'm not sure a tax on tires would be the solution to having them, in our riverbanks. But, we are talking about that. Hey, Brad.
Good, Chip. Thank you. I would just like to say congratulate the board and our school districts for putting forth some very bare bones budgets, and because that's what we can afford here in Hardwick and the Northeast Kingdom. But as I think about that today, and I think about some of the budgets that Burlington and South Burlington are voting on today, their school budgets. And if they pass the $208 million school bond for improvements to their school, then every single one of us are going to shoulder a piece of that cost. And when we have schools here, kids here in our town, in our districts that can't afford We can't afford the things we would like to offer them, yet we are paying for Chittenden County school improvements through the current school funding system. Something is fundamentally wrong with that.
Yep.
And we need you as our voice in Montpelier to fix that.
Great. I'm not sure I can fix it single-handedly, Brad, but a couple of things on that. The Superintendent's Association did a research project this past year, and they found $654 million needed on school infrastructure. That's exactly what you're talking about. That $200 million bond that Burlington is looking at is something that we will have to face. So it's been 10 years since school improvement and building grants have been eliminated from the budget. So some of the conversations are to put that back in so that we do have grants available for schools that do need restoration. Yeah. Yep.
So you're right, it is construction, but that's only one piece of it, and it just happens to shine a light.
As I've said before, I voted against Act 46. I saw that some of the issues that have arisen out of it have happened, and our schools around the state, which were primarily built in 1960s and 70s, early 70s, have experienced deferred maintenance because of tight school budgets, and Act 46 has not helped it. In Walden, it just came to one of the members, the people in Walden had brought up that it was Act 46 was supposed to consolidate school districts and eliminate some superintendent salaries, which are one of the highest paid salaries in each district, and that hasn't happened. And that's exactly what I predicted. I thought that joining school union districts together was not a bad idea. I didn't like imposed consolidation, which I opposed, but I think that in the long run, we're paying for that now. My experience as a lister for 45 years up in Standard is that school funding mechanisms last about 6 years in total, and I could name a bunch of them that have passed throughout the years. So with Act 46 having in their fifth year, I think conversations, at least in the Senate, are starting to happen, which are suggesting exactly what you say, is that our funding has gotten lopsided again. It's returned in some areas, like ours, into pre-Brigham crisis area, that poorer districts are not being attended to, that special ed needs in rural and poor communities are costing more than they are in Shelburne, and Shelburne's returning money, and we're going in the hole for special ed funds. So you're absolutely right, Brad, that there is a lopsidedness that needs to be worked on. I'm not on the Education Committee. I was almost blacklisted by the Education Committee for being too excited about opposing some of the consolidation and some of the issues in Act 46. So I was named the excitable boy, and I guess I earned that with great...
One last question, and then we'll let Chip go on.
Well, I want you to
Ma'am?
continue your meeting, too, so I don't want to take too much time. Hi, Nancy.
I'm Nancy Kellogg of Hardwick. I have two questions. A short one here. One, I've been on the Waste Management Board, too, and there's no enforcement, there's no monitoring. And I understand that maybe the town clerk has a list of landlords who are, going to be explained that they have to provide organic food waste management and tell their tenants. I'm hoping that's what that list was about, maybe not. But that's the same issue that is come round again on the sustainability target of 20% reduction over the next 5 years in carbon dioxide or CO2 greenhouse gases in this pure, brave little state, that seems to be, it's really embarrassing because it's kind of a spin. We're the 8th from the bottom of 50 states, that in terms of pollution, atmospheric pollution. And, people say, well, we have lots of trees, but the world turns, and, 10 years from now, we may all be wearing masks, to breathe. So, yeah, are there, with the sustainability bill, assuming that it passes, since it had so much support, what are the provisions for input, monitoring, and implementation of, those three factors? Or are we just going to talk smart and act dumb,
Well, that'll fall on these committees that'll be formed. These committees will have appointments from the governor. They'll have members of the legislature from both houses. They'll have experts on them. So it is anticipated that those are the issues that will be drilled down on by these committees that are enacted as a result of the Global Warming Solutions Act. It's not perfect. It's a start. The goal is the goal of the Paris Accords, and that's to be carbon neutral by 2050. And most of us will be gone by then. So the question remains.
I thought there was by something a 20% reduction by 2025.
Yes,
well,
it is a progressive. Yes,
so
correct.
How does it start without a plan? When
there's a basic plan.
Is it going to take 4 years to get a plan?
The Paris Accords are the nucleus of this plan. So they do have something to start with. It will be up to these committees to, as I say, get down into the weeds on these things and determine what we as Vermonters and in the New England coalition that exists now with Massachusetts, Maine, and New York, how we can impact fluorocarbon and carbon dioxide emissions to a point where we become more carbon neutral. I mean, that's what's going to happen. I can't tell you too much more than that.
And that includes the Transportation Pact?
Yes, incentives, electric car incentives are included in that bill. I spoke about them a little bit last year. The best range are the most expensive vehicles, but there is an incentive. Actually, they have found that those incentives have been used, that more people have gone electric. I hear all the time that people are buying electric cars and they're trying them out and they're using them. I was in Amsterdam this past fall, and there's a charging station. There's 5 charging stations on the block, and the place is full of electric vehicles and of all kinds. So I think what it will take in this area is for development of batteries, battery life, cold weather protection, and better range for these electric vehicles to make them viable in this area. And that's my belief.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chip.
Thanks,
You've
yes.
had some direction.
Yeah, okay, thanks
We'll
very
keep you
much.
busy.
Yeah, okay,
Take
thanks,
care.
Arise, yeah.
Here, I don't need this. Ron? Gotta have my pencil. Okay, moving back. Thank you very much, Chip. Have a good day. Drive safe. We're back on Article 7. Ron? Mike, please.
Ron Wiesen, West Hardwick. In an attempt to streamline the rest of the meeting, I wonder if I could move that we vote items 7 through 20 as a block. Those are the appropriation items.
We have a motion which would require suspension of the rules to do Articles 7 to 20 as a block. Is there a second? I have a second. What this would mean, just for clarification, if this motion is approved to suspend the rules and do them as a block, you can still speak to each one independently. You can still amend each one independently, but we would not need to have a motion, a second, and a vote on each one individually. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of taking Articles 7 to 20, which are the appropriations, to suspend the rules and take them as a block, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? We have suspended the rules. I still have to read them individually to lay them on the table. So I will do that. Article 7, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $4,500 for the support of the Greensboro Nursing Home? Article 8, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $3,500 for the support of Aware? Article 9, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $1,500 for the support of the Lamoille Family Center? Article 10, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $3,000 for the support of the Hardwick Historical Society? Article 11, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $3,161 for the support of the Northeast Kingdom Human Services? Article 12, shall the town support a sum of money not to exceed $3,000 for the support of the Hardwick Area Community Justice Center? Article 13, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $2,500 for the support of the Hardwick Area Food Pantry? Article 14, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $2,600 for the support of the Caledonia Home Health Care and Hospice? Article 15, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $3,000 for the support of the Hardwick Community Television Channel 16? Article 16, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $3,400 for the support of the Rural Community Transportation? Article 17, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $3,500 for the support of the Northeast Kingdom Arts Council, known as the Hardwick Townhouse? Article 18, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $4,500 for the support of the Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging? Article 19, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $2,100 for the support of the North Country Animal League? Article 20, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $1,500 for the support of the Craftsbury Community Care Center? Now you may discuss any of these in any order. Does anyone wish to speak to any of these articles or have questions on any of them? If you do, please come up to the mic. Oh, she's going to run it to you, Helm. Wait a minute.
I'm Helm Nodelman, resident of East Hardwick. I propose that the amount for the Hardwick food shelf be raised to $5,000. Thank you.
Do you know, okay, that is currently at $2,500, and we have a motion to amend Article 13 to $5,000. Anybody wish to speak to that single amendment? Yes.
I believe that food...
Name, please.
Oh, sorry, Emily Langsner, Hardwick, Vermont. I believe that food stamp benefits have been radically reduced to many families in Vermont, and I think that it would be appropriate to raise the support for the food pantry to address that issue.
Any other comments in regards to the proposed amendment to raise the food shelf from $2,500 to $5,000? Brad? Mike, please, so everybody can hear you.
Just two questions. I'm not sure, what is the status of the food shelf? Is there plenty of food now, or are we running short? And secondly, is that I think they have been reduced, or they have been reduced significantly, the food stamps?
Can anyone speak for the food shelf? Did you want to make a comment?
I don't know exactly what is available from week to week at the food shelf, but I think it serves a very important need in this community. And I actually do not have the statistics. If someone has a handheld device where they can look it up as far as how significant the loss of food stamp benefits has been across the board nationwide, but I do believe it is very significant. So I think that hunger is likely to be a worse problem in this next fiscal year, so I would recommend that. I think that's a very good recommendation to increase the benefit to the food pantry.
Any other comments in regards to the 5,000? Sir?
Dave Gross, East Hardwick, not an expert, but what I've read in the papers, the SNAP benefit programs had been reduced, and I believe there was a number of people removed in Vermont as a whole, which was in the thousands. And obviously, the Hardwick area with our economic situation is impacted. I think just generally, you can look and see the food insecurity in this town itself has, especially amongst children, is in the teens, and that needs to be addressed, and that was before these cuts. So there is a food security issue in our community, and I think it's appropriate we address it in a positive way.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Janice Davison. Just to let everybody know, Hardwick Food Shelf has just opened it up, so you can go in twice this month. I think they're doing it for the next couple of months. I'm just not sure if they are or not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? I will call the question then on the amendment only, and it is to change Article 13 in the block to read, shall the town appropriate a sum of money not to exceed $5,000 for the support of the Hardwick area food pantry? All those in favor of amending Article 13, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries, and we have amended Article 13. Any other comments in regards to any of these other appropriations? And with your permission, I will not reread the articles before we vote on them. I think we all can read them ourselves. With the amended amount in Article 13, all those in favor of approving Articles 7 through 20 as a block, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries, and we have done a first. We have approved the appropriations as a block. Thank you. Moving on to Article 21, and this caused some discussion previously. Shall the town make the following statement of support for the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail? The resolution request is, and I quote, "We, the citizens of Hardwick, strongly support the completion of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. We urge the governor and legislature to jointly develop a plan that will ensure the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail is completed by 2025. Is there a motion to approve this? I have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Ma'am.
Yeah, my concern about the rail trail is the proximity to houses with the snowmobiles, and I know that snowmobiles are allowed, and that's part of the plan, and I do know homeowners that have had a lot of destruction on their property due to like kind of wildcats snow machine use at night, and I was wondering if anyone knows anything about how the snow machine part of this will be enforced as far as maintaining like a quiet time at night, and also enforcing like the trespassing problem when people go off the trail and just go wildcat around a field and terrorize animals and that kind of thing.
Okay, can anyone speak to that?
My recollection is that there's a 11 p.m. curfew on the snowmobile use. Is that correct? 11 p.m.? I think it's something like that. 10 p.m. curfew. I believe it's enforced by VAST with cooperation with local law enforcement. I think that's the answer, really.
Hi, Mary Gagnon from Hardwick. Now I'm going to lose my train of thought. I was just wondering, and it may be that nobody here knows the answer, but I would just like the question to be out there is, first of all, I'm really in favor of the rail trail as a trail. But secondary to that, as someone who's like looking toward the future and our carbon footprint and stuff, I'm wondering if it should become important in the future for us to revert to a rail situation. Does the right-of-way maintain as a potential rail right-of-way?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, and I agree. It would be great to have rail service. So the way that it's structured here in Vermont is that right-of-way or ownership of the rail bed is in a federal rail bank, and at any time it could be reverted to a railroad, and construction of the trail could not do anything that would prevent it from being reverted to a railroad.
Thank you very much.
Just as a side note, and I know I'm not supposed to do this, but keeping the rail trail open would allow from trees and stuff not taking it over. Nancy?
Nancy Kellogg, Hardwick. This was a discussion of
Speak into the mic, please.
This was a discussion that was at the Conservation Committee about the noise issue, and what's Ken's last name? He's a commissioner on the Davis, yeah. And he said that there already is a noise ordinance. I happen to have a neighbor, young person, who you'd think he was sawing wood, with a chainsaw 20 hours a day. So the noise factor is, if they end up on their own land, there's nothing you can do about it, I believe. But the ordinance is at 10 o'clock. After 10 o'clock, the police...
Yes, that's what Eric said.
Can be called and enforced, go and talk to them and explain that this is not okay.
Okay.
So...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Paul?
Paul Fix, Hardwick. Just as a bit of historical perspective, I was Hardwick's representative to the state body evaluating uses of the rail corridor following the washouts 15, 20 years ago. I don't have a date. But at that time, for perspective, the state told us when we were evaluating the proposals that there would be no money available for any proposal. So as a result, the rail made no sense, even though there were shippers who signed affidavits, et cetera. Had the money that's gone into the trail gone into the rail, or the money that already has and is slated to finish it, gone into the rail, we would still have a rail today, for what it's worth.
Ma'am?
How do I do this, Emily? Hi, Deborah Hart from East Hardwick. Our home is fairly close to the rail trail. I think it's an awesome trail. I love to walk my dogs on it. However, ultimately, it's up to the person who's using the trail. When they're snowmobiling, it's their integrity. It's are they following the rules or not? There's no way that the police can stop people from using that trail after hours. Many times we have people blasting by there in the middle of the night. They wake me up, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Whee! I can hear it in my bedroom. I've called the police. Well, did you get a description of them? No, they were driving 45 miles an hour down the trail. So the people who use the trail, please use it. I love people out there enjoying the nature and their snowmobiles, great. But ultimately, it's their integrity. people driving their four-wheelers in the summer. Again, they're not meant to be on the trail, but ultimately, are they following the rules? Are they making it usable for other people? Or are they ruining it for people? So ultimately, you know, you can't stop them from breaking the law, and hopefully people will have integrity and use the trail and not abuse it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Eric?
It seems like there is a lot of concern about snowmobile use, and I'd just like to point out that while snowmobile use is an important use on the trail, by VAST's own measure of places on the trail that have been developed completely, snowmobile use really only accounts for about 20% of the year-round use. Most of it is walking, biking, running, that kind of thing. So there's that. And then the other thing is I just would point out again that the reason it's important for us to pass this resolution is to send a message to Montpelier that we're in favor of keeping the money in the budget, in the state budget, to actually finish the trail in a reasonable time frame rather than an infinitely long time frame.
Any other comments? Are you ready for the question? Article 21, shall the town, all those in favor of the town making the following statement of support on the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail resolution request, and I quote, "We, the citizens of Hardwick, strongly support the completion of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. We urge the governor and legislature to jointly develop a plan that will ensure the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail is completed by 2025. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions? And the motion carries. Article 22, these are my two favorite articles. Shall the town authorize the select board for the period of 1 year to enter into contracts with new industrial and commercial owners, lessees, bailees of real property, or with existing or new owners, lessees, bailees, or operators who construct, acquire, or renovate industrial and/or commercial real property, including additions to existing property, for the purpose of fixing and maintaining the municipal rate applicable to such real property, or for the purpose of fixing the amount of money which shall be paid as an annual municipal tax upon such real property pursuant to the provisions of Title 24, Vermont Statutes Annotated, Section 2741. What is your pleasure? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, and with your permission, I will not reread Article 22. All those in favor of approving Article 22 as previously read, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions, and the motion carries. It needs a few more commas so I can have a breath in there. Article 23, shall the town authorize the select board for the period of 1 year to enter into contracts with operators of agricultural real property or with existing or new owners, lessees, bailees, or operators who construct, acquire, or renovate, or who intend to construct, acquire, or renovate agricultural real property for the purpose of fixing and maintaining the valuation of such real property in the grand list for the purpose of fixing and maintaining the municipal rate applicable to such real property, or for the purpose of fixing the amount in money which shall be paid as an annual municipal tax upon such real property pursuant to provisions of Title 24, Vermont Statutes Annotated, Section 2741. What is your pleasure? I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any discussion? Again, with your permission, I will not reread Article 23. All those in favor of Article 23 as previously read, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions, and the motion carries. Article 24, to transact any other non-binding business proper to be brought before said meeting.
All rise. Now?
Yes.
Ordinarily during Article 10, Lorraine Hussey would stand up and remind you that the Hardwick Historical Society is having our corned beef and cabbage dinner on March 14th at the Legion. Doors open at 5 o'clock. We start serving at 6. We serve until 7:30, I think it is, and then the band starts. Board members have tickets for sale. Sherry has tickets at the store. It's a good meal at a good price, $12 per plate for adults, $6 per plate for children. If your child doesn't need its own plate, is going to eat off yours, then it's free. March 14th, 5 to 6 to 7:30 at the Legion. Y'all come.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Deborah Hart again from East Hardwick. I just want to give a big shout out to the fire department. Never having had to call the fire department, about a month ago, my husband went out to start the car and it caught on fire, which was really exciting. But we did have to call the fire department. He was frantically shoveling snow on it, and we used up 2 extinguishers of our own, and it just was blazing. There was unbelievable smoke. Sorry, state of Vermont. And when I dialed 911, the fire department came, and oh my gosh, thank you so much, all you beautiful people who are there for us. And it's just this beautiful hidden gem, because you don't know how much you need them and how incredible it was to see that truck pulling into the driveway. So thank you so much for all the hard work that this fire department does, and hopefully I will never have to call for them again. And shout out, everybody. Thank you.
David?
I just want to offer a big thank you and a round of applause for Lorraine Huzzy for her lifetime of service to this community. Thank you very much, Lorraine.
And you all should have noted that this town report was dedicated to Lorraine. Anything else proper to come before this meeting? I just want to remind everybody that voting is open until 7. Ma'am, if you'd like to come up to the mic. And before you all leave, we should vote one way or the other, your personal preference.
I'm Katrina Razzianelli of Hardwick. I'm curious what conversations have happened around walkability with respect to the Yellow Barn project. I think it's a great potential economic driver and tourism driver, and I'm curious about connecting that to the center of town, especially for all of the jobs that are going to be created there. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's a great point. Still considering all the options. The most obvious connection is the rail trail itself, because the rail trail goes right through that property and then comes pretty much downtown. So that's like the primary thing. So we're certainly open to any other ideas. Sherry has suggested running a trolley. I don't know how far she's got with that, but any idea? Not far. So the main idea is the rail trail, really. And walkability generally is being discussed by the downtown group that's discussing the traffic and pedestrian safety work task force.
Mary?
Again, I'm going to lose my train of thought on the way up here. I'm terribly sorry. I'll have to take a second.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment to make?
Dave Garrison, I'm speaking as chair of the Planning Commission, which we're doing the walkability study. Specifically, Wolcott Street, that's part of the area we're looking at. We're focused very much on the downtown area, but also extending out that way. And there have been proposals for improving the sidewalk communication down that direction. But that's going to be a little more expensive, so we're doing the short, easy stuff first, like crosswalks and signage. And then as we continue on, we'll start looking at basically improving the sidewalk and separation from the streets and stuff. But that's going to cost more money and coordination with the state.
Thank you. Mary, you'll have to write it down and do it for next year. If there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn would be in order. I have a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions can stay here. The motion carries. And thank you all for a good meeting.